Welcome to Tech Talk Nation, talking about the latest tech, industry news, and hot topics. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Visit our website at techtalknation.com.
Good evening and welcome to Tech Talk Nation. I'm your host, Matt Fitzgerald, and we have a heck of a day for you today. We have a bunch of great articles that are coming your way, and we have a lot of good tech news for you. We're going to be talking about everything from the chip shortage, once again, to Apple being Apple and doing some nefarious things, all the way over to how Tesla is doing some new battery tech, and going to end off with a really interesting article that I think a lot of people in this chat will really enjoy. So today we are joined once again by Matt Grislow and Ryan Eastman. How are you guys doing today?
It's another day, another dollar.
There you go.
I'm good.
Good. Well, I know we want to try and keep our episode a little shorter than usual today because I know Ryan has some festivities going on over there. So we want to keep everything rolling along. Before we go on, Grislow, you want to plug the social media really quickly?
Yeah, guys, keep following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Facebook at Tech Talk Nation Show, Instagram at Tech Talk Nation, and Twitter at Tech Talk Nations. That's Tech Talk Nation with an S. You can also find us in Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast from, so you can watch us after the fact or listen to us after the fact after we're done live. So go follow us there. We're building kind of a system to post some more stuff. I know it's kind of bare right now, but we appreciate all the followers we're getting, and we want to continue that momentum going forward. So watch out for those posts, and thanks for tuning in tonight. We appreciate all of you.
Definitely, and that is for sure. Well, it's been a busy week in tech. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that. I mean, we had a lot of articles that we submitted this week, and we had to narrow it down to just some of the biggest articles that we think will be great talking points for the show. So to kind of go into our update segment, to begin today, I'm going to go over, once again, to the chip shortage. The chip shortage keeps CIOs and other tech leaders scrambling. Long story short, this article in the Wall Street Journal is basically saying how, as schools are starting now, it's really starting to see the effects of like organizations that are trying to upgrade their technology, and they have all these lead times that are not able to get these devices by the time school starts, which is concerning for a number of reasons because that messes up how people learn and things like that. So just another way we are seeing the chip shortage rear its ugly head. Alrighty.
Yeah. Well, I just want to make one little comment. I think it's just funny how, or not funny, but interesting that last year you weren't really seeing a lot of this. You know, kids were still working or learning remote, and there's more and more kids now that are in schools after the vaccines have been rolled out. Maybe not to all these kids, but we're seeing more and more kids in schools, and so now this sort of back to school technology chip shortage is really starting to be a problem, and I expect this to kind of trickle down or trickle up or kind of just propagate into more and more areas that we hadn't seen it impact before.
Yep.
Definitely.
Still largely targeting, lower price devices though. Largely.
Yep, I agree. Well, the next article we're really going to dive into here with this was big news, and this what made a lot of people on Reddit very, very, very angry. And I'm sure it's going to make a couple of us very angry as well. This is a big piece of big news from Apple here. Apple puts out a 6-page FAQ on child abuse photo scanning tech. Long story short, what Apple is going to be doing is they are going to be scanning your photos for any traces of child abuse. And there was a ton of articles on this, and I picked this one in particular because this is kind of like their FAQs, how they're going to handle all of this entire fiasco that they basically dealt with. And long story short, what Apple is doing is they are locally trying to scan all of the pictures on your device and flagging pictures that show rampant child abuse or anything that's really terrible, and sending that information over to the Center for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to try and figure out what's going on here. And this is a very interesting article. It's something that I'm not particularly happy seeing technology companies involuntarily forcing on people. But what's your guys' thoughts? This is big
Ryan,
news.
you can
I can lead us off. All right.
Go for
I
it.
feel justified arguing last week over how much data Apple actually takes. I remember the first thing seeing this was laughing and putting this in our chat. Like, yep, just I'd mentioned this, but
was like
my
the
take
day
on it
after,
is,
so.
yeah, it was funny. I don't like it one bit. I get it. I get the why, and it does seem like it's, good intentions and all that. I get that, but I just don't like it one bit because it's a very exportable system. Like for this purpose, I get it. They're handling, it seems, the data responsibly and doing everything responsibly. The two things they're doing, because there is the one thing is only applies to iCloud, looking for basically CP more or less. But and then the second thing is it actually goes through messages for young kids, and it like hides pictures locally, and it sends messages to like the parents if they open them, or hides potentially like not safe pictures. That's all we're.
Unsavory. There you go.
CSAM. CSAM is the acronym.
Well, no, the other one's just hiding unsafe pictures for kids.
For kids or of kids?
For. Like it's in their messages, and it's trying to stop them from looking at that. And the parents get notified if they open it if they're under 13.
Oh, really? So
I didn't
like,
see that, but that's
Yeah.
I didn't see
Sorry,
that, but that's
that
pretty
yelling in the
interesting.
background.
oh
Yeah, no, that was in the FAQ.
Huh.
But I don't know. My take on it is I don't like it. I get why. I get the whole good intentions thing, but the old cliche, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because like just scanning through messages and hiding things is very. Man, I can just see future problems down the road because. I mean, even just recently, technology companies have been taking all this interest in trying to stop what they call misinformation and all that. And, it's such a quick step to export that basically to like, hiding misinformation from other people's phones so they don't see it.
right. And it's
It's
also
such like it's an easy step. That's why I don't like it, because I get why they're doing it for this specific thing. And specifically for the iCloud thing, that makes complete and total sense to me, because that's their servers. And if you have it on their servers, that's their problem when the FBI raids them, because they shouldn't have that, obviously. It's illegal. And
Right.
immoral, quite frankly. But I get that part. That part doesn't really bother me that much, because they're just cleaning it off their servers, because they can't have that there. It's their servers and it's their responsibility. The local phone thing is what actually bothers me. That's the one that actually like gets to me.
And I have 2 points for that too. One, they have that code on your phone then that somehow finds this, which means that they kind of have that code on everything, you could argue.
Sure.
Which
that's the one for the messages one.
Yeah, right.
The other one only comes through your iCloud, the one that's looking for CP.
Okay.
Right.
And
or CSAF.
The
CSAM,
other
yeah.
And the other thing that I find interesting too is, and somebody brought this up on Reddit, is there's kind of two conundrums that you could have here. One, what about a parent who would say like take a picture of their kid during bath time or something like that? Would that get flagged as them trying to drown a kid? Or would that get flagged like anyway?
Example.
I mean, I don't know.
No,
like
I think you have a fair point there, Fitz. I mean, I don't quite think that's a bad example.
I read through their FAQ. I read through their FAQ, and everything goes through a manual confirmation.
Okay, so I remember reading something about the manual thing, and there's like trillion or 1 in 1 trillion or something percent chance that a picture would be flagged, which
Well, if
number one,
something
I don't
gets
believe.
flagged and it's wrong, you still need a manual confirmation to actually tip
Mhm.
off law enforcement.
Okay. And then the second point is, what about people who enjoy certain fantasies?
Kinks.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, will that get flagged? Like,
I this whole uh issue of Apple now kind of backtracking on their whole privacy thing is hard because on one hand, right, you're right, Ryan, they shouldn't have this stuff anyway. It's illegal
Yeah. Well,
for them to have a lot of this stuff
yeah.
anyway. But at the same time, Apple has to protect, at least on the side of their server side, the information that's on there. And if they have any incriminating or illegal things on there, then I suppose then it's on them, and it's well within their right to kind of search for that. But I know I've argued against this with you in the past, Ryan. But I do agree that it is sort of a slippery slope, especially considering Apple's huge push for privacy, and especially more so their push for more on-device protection, on-device security, more things on device and not anything on the cloud. So when they talk about and they start implementing these things that have to interact with your device when you go into the cloud, I do kind of see it as a bit of a slippery slope. Like, okay, well, now they're doing this for a good purpose, right, initially, but how can they kind of push the line, especially, if there's new leadership at Apple? Tim Cook's not going to last forever. He's not immortal. Steve Jobs wasn't either. I mean, we all know what happened there. There's going to be a next guy or a next girl. And I can totally understand where this can kind of be pushed in a different direction, all for the sake of protection, or maybe under the guise of protection, which I can see is problematic. I did not know about the messages portion of this, which
the messages is the one that I take issue with.
Yeah, that's the one I probably take issue with of both of these, or these two separate sort of instances, because it seems like, and from what you're telling me, it's on device. This isn't, it's going to
the messages one is on device because it doesn't break end-to-end encryption, so it has to go on the device.
Yeah, see, that sort of thing does scare me. I don't really love that, and that does freak me out a bit. But I mean, what am I going to do? It's not
Right.
like it doesn't seem like Apple's going to be pulling this,
Well,
pulling the plug on this.
No, absolutely
no.
not.
And here's the thing: you mentioned this too, kind of like you're getting that slippery slope here. Harkening back to a very, very old time on the show when, Ryan, you used to say, "Johnny giveth,
back in
Johnny
the day.
taketh away." Like, imagine.
Well, Johnny Ives doesn't even work there anymore.
Exactly. And imagine if
Johnny
something.
giveth, Johnny taketh away.
There you go. Back when we had the studio, and
Yeah.
it was think about that though. If you start with something like this, where could that lead? Could that lead all the way down to you getting flagged for saying that about one of their designers, and then your phone magically not working or something like that? So, I mean,
That's actually a really fair point, though, that you bring up, especially because there's kind of a buzz right now about social media, or about social media censorship. You saying the wrong thing, you saying something that someone doesn't agree with, no matter if it's true or not, and getting banned, or ultimately taken off the platform or suspended. I mean, it's a little different because those are private companies. When you enter into your agreement, when you create a profile, you do sort of waive your rights a bit, and it's sort of it's an odd situation considering now the public square, if you will, is very digital now. So it's hard to do that, but this is a personal device of someone else's. I haven't poured through, I'm sure, the hundreds of pages in the terms of service for ownership of an iPhone.
That time.
But I don't have time for that. But at the end of the day, whether or not it does say they can, use what you have on there. Even when they do, give you options every time you open something new, or you have a new device asking if you want to send things back to Apple and you opt out. It does kind of scare me where they could take this, especially because in the past few years they've said no to federal law enforcement of trying to get into people's phones to get information from criminals. I wonder if this kind of opens or reopens that door to the possibility of Apple now kind of working with officials with this new stance of, okay, we're not going to tolerate things that are illegal. Will this impact that?
Yeah. Well, the iCloud thing, that one I do actually sympathize with and will actually give them defense on, because if it's on their servers, it does technically become their responsibility.
Right.
Like because their servers are the ones that will get raided because that's where it's stored. If you have the photo not on iCloud and only on your device, it wouldn't actually check it.
Right.
So that's like an iCloud only feature. It's the messages one that's the one that I'm zoned in on and I don't like, because that's So what that does is any sexually explicit image, if you're listed as a minor, it gets auto hidden, and you have to manually click to reveal it. And if you do that, the parents are notified. The parents notified thing actually stops once you turn 13, which is weird. But
that's
I guess
because
my biggest question is, how do they know if you're a minor or not? Is it that you
it's in
like
your
a
Apple
minor?
account.
Yeah, it's in your Apple account.
It would be in your Apple account. You have to be on like some family plan.
Yeah, it's like a family
where your
sharing
parents are
thing.
managing your account.
Oh, this is only a feature where that's only the case if you're on a family plan.
And the family has to turn it on.
Oh, okay, so it's
no, it's not auto on. It's literally only for minors, only if the family turns on. It's a very small like push in that direction, admittedly.
Well, okay.
But it's still a push in that direction.
Now that I know that, though, I mean, there's plenty of features that are optional that you don't have to opt into.
Sure.
It's totally up to the user or whatever. I think from a parental side of things, this is just another tool for parents to guard their kids from anything bad or whatever. I remember back in the day, I won't say where or whatever. When I was younger in school, there were some images that went out of someone, and everyone got in trouble that got them. And I can see, and it's bad. That's terrible. No matter if that person intended for those to get out or not. And so I do believe that it's not a bad tool. It would have definitely maybe stopped that.
No, it wouldn't have.
Or lessened that from becoming a bigger issue.
I think it would have amplified it, honestly.
You would have been, how old would you have been? Probably like 14 when that happened, give or take?
Yeah, we're 14.
So no parents would have been notified. It would have just been, all it would have required you to do is click reveal.
Oh, because it opts out.
As soon as you turn 13, when you're 13, it stops notifying the parents. Which I don't know why that's their cutoff or whatever.
It's something having
to
do with
arbitrary and weird.
It's something with
it's just weird if they're targeting minors and they're capping it at 13.
That's the part that confuses me.
It's something with one of the laws.
It still auto hides the picture, but then, I mean, you can still just click through.
Interesting.
It's still to me just it's a very subtle push in that direction, but just the fact that if you're scanning on device things and trying to censor them a little bit, it gets me. I'm touchy on that, because especially with recently how many sites have made it their mission to like try to stop whatever they consider to be misinformation, whether or not that's accurate, because what they consider to be misinformation changes constantly, especially with the COOF recently. But the positions change a lot. But the point is, it's just a push in that direction. They can stop you from, now that they have that device or they have code on there, they can stop certain things. And once you just push that a little further, and then you can still claim under the guise of like good morals, like, oh, we're just trying to stop people getting lied to, we're trying to stop misinformation, etc.
Yeah, like we're not gonna we're gonna prevent you from sending any message that says the iPhone batteries die out after a certain amount of time.
Yeah, and
Stuff like
that's
that.
the easiest way to export it, is to stop you from
Mhm.
talking trash about Apple. But
I mean, now that I do know though that,
I
or
get
you know,
that
more
it's still a
understanding
step.
of it, I'm not really that much against this implementation of it, but I do understand, and
And once
I
again, I
am
repeat my
worried.
line.
I am worried about kind of how this could escalate, um, because and simply because it's on device and not through the cloud, not through any services you have to opt into. It is essentially baked into the phone. However, it is, a specific use case.
All I
And
will say is that the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
I understand that. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not sure if this really is a bad intention. I can see it leading to bad intentions, but
No, that's
keeping
precisely the point.
keeping.
It's not.
I know what your point is, but I know very clearly what your point is. But um, I don't know. I guess I'm conflicted because yeah, there's good things to this. There's a very obvious good thing, but I do feel like their implementation of this good thing, or not air quotes, the good thing. It is a good thing. Um, is a little. It's a little lacking. It doesn't make sense to me that they're capping this at 13. If they're keeping it to minors, raise it to 18. Um, I don't think there's a difference between in the law a 13 and a 14-year-old.
Well, here's the thing. Even younger than that, you can still reveal the image. It just notifies the parent. That's the only difference.
So it says it's because of COPPA, the Children Online Privacy Protection Act, passed in
Sure.
1998, that restricts websites from tracking data on children under 13 years of age. So it's all,
Okay, so that's where they got their number.
yep, it's COPPA.
Hmm.
So basically, that's like the internet's age of adulthood, as Wall Street Journal puts it.
Weird.
I don't think I was an adult at 14,
Not at all.
even at 18.
Even
I know
at
plenty of
21.
And you knew,
21-year-olds who should.
and Fitz, you knew me when I was 14 and 18.
I know some 21-year-olds who aren't adults, quite frankly, but
Oh, believe me, I know some people in their middle ages that are 40s, 50s that could be a little more grown up, but
There you go.
yeah,
Well,
I don't
anyway,
know.
very good discussion on this article. In the interest of time, we probably should move on. So, our next article here is about DC, Washington, DC, giving away AirPods to encourage youth vaccinations. Either you could get a pair of AirPods or you could get a $51 gift card, um, which is interesting. So, they're just basically telling people to get the vaccine this way, and giving them AirPods. So kind of cool, I guess.
Well, the $51 thing comes from the push to be the 51st state, for DC to be a 51st state. Although I think it's funny
stupid.
though that they say that you can either have this thing that's valued at over $100, or you can take a $51 gift card. I think it's a
Ooh,
little silly.
right.
You could resell the AirPods for more than $51.
There you go.
Stupid. The point of DC is that it's not a state, so it's free from statehood intervention, but I digress.
There you go. Well, speaking of
It is
laws,
Tech Talk Nation, not Political Talk Nation.
Sorry, I'll start that show separately.
well, anyway, speaking of laws, infrastructure bill. A
Oh,
little bit of an
God.
update on what we've been kind of talking about. The infrastructure bill would mandate vehicles that have alcohol monitoring systems. Basically, they slipped this in as part of the bill, saying like, hey, automakers are now going to have to figure out ways to prevent drunk driving in the cars using anything else. It said car makers to have technology to prevents or limits operation once potential impairment is detected. Basically, it would issue a warning, slow the vehicle, or pull it over, or something. People have said that in this thing, they've kind of speculated, like maybe using the air quality within the cabin or something along the lines of that to determine the blood alcohol level. And I find this interesting. I mean, I support the concept of literally creating a physical lockout to prevent somebody from drunk driving. Um, it's just one of those things where I hope it just doesn't impair the overall driving experience where it's like you have to stare into a sensor for 10 minutes or something like that for it to your car to turn on. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it.
Yeah, yeah, I knew you would.
Yeah.
Um, I feel, man, I don't know if I really can say, but I feel the same way about this as I do about the Apple iCloud stuff because, um, sending harmful pictures or illicit pictures to minors or pictures of minors to other minors, is against the law. Driving under the influence is also against the law. The difference in these situations, though, is that, um, you're kind of, see, I don't know. It's tough. I'm not necessarily sure, and maybe this is a topic of conversation, if it's the automaker's responsibility to sort of judge and critique users' ability to drive. Furthermore, I think it could be interesting to see how this technology could be, this potential technology could be not not implemented properly in the case of people who have some actual physical or mental impairments. Um, I can see that being a problem right away.
Yeah, good
I
point.
find it stupid.
I mean, yeah.
You
And
can't listen. You can't save people from themselves. All right. We already have tons of places where if you get caught with a DUI, you now have a breathalyzer in your car that you have to blow on to start driving again. That's in so many places. That's the case. And like, what you can't. It's so hard to save people from themselves. All right. Really.
Yeah,
Like at the same time, maybe hear me out, right? McDonald's, right? They should have to like keep a registry of credit cards so you can't eat too much McDonald's because you're gonna get fat and die.
hmm, good point.
Hmm? Let's implement that too. Let's stop people from dying from cholesterol. That's like the number 2 killer in the country.
I guess the biggest difference though here is you eat a cheeseburger 5 times a week. That will not ultimately impact other people. If you drive drunk or impaired on the roads, that could potentially impact other people, not just their here and now physical being, but in the future whether or not they're actually here alive on this earth. So that's why I
Sure.
do understand this sort of implementation of it. I do think, however, this is a little bit of a slight um, segue out of the infrastructure portion of the
If you
bill.
think that is,
Yeah, there's
have
plenty of
you?
stuff in it that I don't think
I
is.
want to ask, have you
Hold
read through
on,
the
staying
bill?
on topic. I want to stay on topic for a second,
Sure.
and just
I'll
finish
go
this.
off topic in a second.
Just staying on topic here, just for the rest of my point. Um, I don't understand why this is something that has to be in there for infrastructure. I think charging stations is infrastructure. Putting or mandating car manufacturers to install these systems into cars is not infrastructure. And I can definitely see this just because I know, Ryan, you're against this, and I'm in a way against this as well. I can see this being a problem in Congress. But
Yeah.
again, it is you are a danger to yourself and others, not just to yourself when you drive impaired. And so I see this as a positive, but also again a negative because, well, I don't like the idea that now car manufacturers or car makers are determining whether or not you can drive based off of. I can only imagine to be a very rough first generation of limited technology or flawed technology. And obviously, there being cases where it will not work in cases where people have physical or mental impairments who are still able to drive and perfectly capable. You know.
To to add
Yeah.
on to add on to your point here, the timeline that they give for this is 6 years from now to implement this
Stupid.
system. So, knowing politics and knowing the way things work, who knows if this is actually going to happen? I just find it interesting that it got put in the bill. And
Oh,
furthermore,
nice.
yeah,
How long you got for me to describe to you all the crap that's gone into that bill that doesn't relate to infrastructure?
I know there's a lot of
Because I don't
crypto.
know if you remember last week, there was the crypto stuff in the infrastructure bill, which has nothing to do with infrastructure. Community college doesn't really have anything to do with infrastructure. there's been like 20. There's probably, if I read through the bill, which I won't do because they make bills 2,000 pages long, which,
For a reason, by the way.
yeah, no, that should be illegal as well, but whatever. If you actually made a list, I'm sure there's hundreds of items in there that have nothing to do with infrastructure.
Right.
I
Well,
mean, and they've been doing this for years too. The Patriot Act has nothing to
There-
do with being patriotic. It has everything to do with taking away civil liberties, but whatever.
Just one
I
point,
digress.
though, on what when you're talking about Congress or the law mandating things for car makers. A short time ago, I can't remember if it was Congress or if it was whatever bureau of bureaucracy mandated this, but a short time ago, within 10 years ago, let's say 6 years ago, they said started mandating that cars had backup cameras, and that was for safety. That makes perfect sense to me. I don't think that's a very trivial kind of thing. I see this as sort of an extension of that sort of protection of
Why
protection
do
of
I
the
have to have a
consumer.
backup camera? Why can't I just learn how to back up? You're not protecting
Okay.
it. You're trying to protect the consumer from themselves.
Right, but I think the reason I bring this up is I think this is a perfect example of something that is not inhibitive or puts some sort of burden on the user or prevents the user from doing anything. If anything, I suppose, if you're not being too careful, it can stop you if the car has any sort of like active braking system when it senses something nearby the car when you're backing up. I think that's a good thing. I really
Sure.
don't understand the reason why you could argue against that. But
Easy.
I see,
I'm a programmer. I know other programmers.
Okay. I don't think you can argue against this being an easy,
Yes, I can. It shouldn't be
simple
mandated.
one and done.
It shouldn't be mandated. If I'm a consumer and I think that's important to me, I will ask for it and I will buy it. I don't need you to step in and do it. The free market will handle that.
Well,
But
it's a problem.
constricting the free, well, it takes out lower end cars for people who can't afford better cars. This is the problem with messing with the free market.
Well, Ryan, it's a moot point because now, at least since I believe 2016 or 17, all cars manufactured or sold into the United States are required to have backup cameras.
It's
So you
not a
can't
moot
buy
point.
a new
Someone should
car.
take that out. That's stupid.
I think it's a perfectly good safety
No, listen.
option.
It's yes, and it is, but it should be an option. It shouldn't be mandatory. By
Okay, a
forcing
safety
extra
feature then.
electronics, forcing extra things in there, you actually price out people who could have afforded a car and can't anymore. Because now you have to pay more to get a car, and the base price of a car goes up and up and up. And people who could normally afford cars, which would add a layer of freedom and travel to their life, can't.
I would challenge you on this point and this point only. When manufacturers have to buy parts, they buy parts in bulk, which drives the price down exponentially. When you're talking about a simple camera sensor and just a slight modification of a back trim piece to include the camera, I don't really think it's going to drive or did really drive the price up of a car at all. Moreover, I do think the benefits outweigh the potential risks or downfalls, and to be quite honest with you, I'm not quite sure that has really priced out anyone of not owning a car. And I can't imagine that they being the car makers, baked a significant amount of profit or margin into the cars because they had
I'm
to add
not
a small
saying they
camera.
made profit off it. I'm saying you've raised the base cost, and you're not thinking about the trickle down
Right.
effect of adding a base camera. Because now you have a
Right,
camera,
but-
you need a sensor, you need to run wires to the back, you have to have a cam system in there, you have to have a display screen for someone to look at it. You're increasing the price with every car.
I mean, Ryan, there's plenty. I can't give you a car right now that's being sold without a screen, even a really
Listen,
crappy screen.
I understand this is a moot point because they've already put it in there, but it shouldn't be this way. It should be a bottom-up demand, not a top-down order.
I guess I won't be able to agree with you on this, but I can say at least one example. One thing I can agree with you on would be the idea that as all of these safety features or safety options rather are becoming features, I do fully believe that is making our current and future drivers more and more prone to accidents because they're relying more and more on technology. That I can most definitely agree with you on, and I can't imagine you disagreeing with me on.
Yeah, no, I like not having blind spot monitors or a backup camera or even a backup beeper. It's made me very good at driving.
There you go.
I think they're good. I think they're good options, potentially good features. I think anything to protect
That's
you and other people from you are good.
it's
But
the options part that bothers me. I want it to be optional.
right, but in 2021, I can't imagine a small backup camera, the wires that are cents on the dollar for these big manufacturers to really impact the cost of cars so much so that it's impacting the consumers so much that they can't afford cars. I really can't. I can't agree with
See,
that.
but that's because you're thinking of it in a single instant and not as principle by principle. They've mandated, I'm sure. I'm sure there's a list of 200 items that they've mandated being certain that have slowly driven up the price of a car. Because I know in my lifetime, just from watching commercials, the base price has gone up at like, I'd guess somewhere around 10 grand.
I have the numbers in front of me to prove it, but again,
Very.
I really doubt that's impacting a consumer's ability to purchase a
No,
vehicle.
that's one because they're still because the camera maybe, but you still have to display and all the other stuff, and it's a fancy. I think it's a cam wired system. But if the
Well-
list is 200 items long, then you start going up in price
I
because
think-
now you're putting in a ton more things.
I think the big difference between what you guys are seeing here is Ryan's thinking more of like, here's all of the things that they've done in the last whatever years that have driven the price of a car up. And Grislow, you're thinking about this one specific scenario. I mean, I understand both sides here. I understand what both of you guys are
I'm very
thinking.
passionate.
And
I mean, I'm not really. I'm holding the line too.
I mean, I think that you definitely see that a little bit. Probably not as amplified as you think, but hey, I'd actually be interested in doing some research into that and maybe bringing that up in a future episode here. So
As a final point, though, I mean, don't forget, Ryan, these laws are governing new cars, not used cars, and especially right now with the chip shortage, right? Used cars are more prevalent than new cars, and to that end, though, they're still more expensive than they were before. So I don't think. I mean, price is always going to be a problem no matter what, but I don't think that it is ultimately an issue when it comes
short-term
to a
versus
car, because
long-term
you can always buy a used car, and a used car is always going to be cheaper than an expensive car.
Sure,
And
but
eventually, all cars that are used are going to have these systems.
sure, but you're still thinking in what do you call it? Short term, long term. As the older and older cars break down and get scrapped and just attrition off the highway through accidents and other things, that base price of a used car is going to creep up and up to match the increase for the new car.
I get
hope,
what
I hope GDP rises and people can make more money now than they did 50 years ago.
Yeah, well, year over year inflation's 5.4%. So or sorry, month over month.
that's
That's only as of the last year, 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah, no, only not even the last year, like the last year and a half, maybe.
Well, then we
Jeez.
can't really talk long term here.
This last month was 5.4%, which is insane.
Jeez.
Anyway,
I'm not disagreeing
Anyway,
with you.
let's transition
Speaking-
out of economics.
Speaking of inflation and prices and stuff like that,
Economic Talk Nation next week with Ryan Eastman.
actually, this is more money, which is kind of a pain. AMC will have a technology to receive Bitcoin as a payment by year end, according to their CEO. And thanks for the memes, AMC. I don't know what else to say here, but like, hey, good for you, I guess. Just go along with the memes. You're gonna profit eventually, I guess. So
I mean, it's another step towards mainlining crypto.
mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think you're right. I think it's definitely something kind of like future proofing, in the long term. It's just funny. I can't imagine. Like, I remember going, to the theater when I was younger. You go up to this counter, you flip them $1, a bill, whether it's $20, whatever it was. I guess you could pay with your credit card. Now you can do, wireless touch to pay things.
Even the
It makes
kiosks.
sense to kind of evolve that sort of payment use. But it's just funny to me to think that someday in the future, as long as all of this, internet coin is more and more prevalent, that there's going to be 10-year-olds and 13-year-olds paying to go see Fast and Furious 65 with Bitcoin.
Fast and Furious
Yeah, and I mean, it is like
65.
it's probably like an NFC tap or like a scan QR code on my phone thing. Like
I
it's
could
really
see it.
cool.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you know what? You know what you got to do in order to pay with Bitcoin? You actually have to have Bitcoin. And apparently, Google doesn't think you need money. So they just rolled out a pay calculator explaining cuts for their employees who are going to be working from home. And this was actually, I think, like pretty breaking news, like as of yesterday or today or something like that. But long story short, they have like a new internal calculator that basically prioritizes where certain people live within the organization, and they like don't get a pay cut. But if you moved somewhere or live somewhere that has a lower cost of living, they're just going to shave off part of your salary if you don't come in and work in the office. So I don't know.
I uh,
I
I have a take on this.
Okay.
I I work remote half the day, half the week, and the other half the week I work in the office. It's a hybrid situation. I work 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. I'm 35 minutes from my place of work, or at least one of the offices, maybe 20 from the other. I live near a big metro area, or a bigger metro area than a lot of other cities, like smaller cities, right? Indianapolis. Um, I really do not like this move for a few reasons, but mostly because it seems like a lot of companies, at least those that were initially very aggressive trying to get their employees back in the office and are now pulling back, that Google is essentially not just being aggressive on getting people in the office, but they're sort of pushing the gas pedal harder on it. I don't really like this at all. I can understand the situations which they do bring up in the article about where people move away or they move to other areas such that they just can't commute in, right, if they have to. I can understand that as being a problem, but to me, I think the pandemic has shown that people can work fairly efficiently at home, and in some cases even more so than at work. Now, I understand it's not the case for everyone, but I can say at least for my team, it sounds like that is the case. And they're not, giving us pay cuts because we're not coming in 5 days a week. If you can do your job just as well at home as you can in the office, I don't understand why you have to have sort of a pay cut. And to that end, I mean, you're really going to penalize people that are living further away from work when they already have to commute an hour in, not to mention how much they're going to have to spend on gas right now because gas prices are high. You're not incentivizing people to stay with the company if you're going to be charging people more or making people spend more of their personal money to get to work and make less, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to normalize, I guess, the actual take home money people from the city get and people who are living out in the suburbs get. But like, it annoys me a little bit, I think, because those people chose to live in the city and those people chose to live in the suburbs for separate reasons. I mean,
And they both took that offer because they thought the compensation was fair.
yeah.
So,
Right. I think another interesting point too is and something I didn't find was how this impacts. I mean, it's a calculator, right? It's based off where you live. How this or how it impacts the different jobs in the company. For example, you could have at Google an engineer making, I don't know, let's say $150,000 a year. You can have another person who makes half that. What's that? $75,000 a year,
mhm.
right? That both live in New York City. But that person that makes more money, or I'm sorry, the person that makes less money could live out in the burbs, right? But the person that's making more money, that's living in the city, is not seeing a or I'm sorry, not a tax cut, but a pay cut, versus the person who's making less money because he can't afford to live in the city because it's expensive, is seeing a pay cut. I think that's sort of almost discriminatory in sort of like a caste or a class system where you're saying, okay, people that make more money and then can afford to live in the city will not get a pay cut or as
So
big of a pay cut.
let's
But the people that don't live in the city who can't afford to live in the city, who commute in because it's cheaper for them and their overall budget in their life living situation, are going to get less money because they don't live near in the city.
Let's qualify this though. It seems like from my very limited reading on this, it seems like if you go into the office, you're not affected. You're completely not affected if you go into the office. If you want to stay work from home, this is when this actually happens. So therefore you don't have the cost to commute to the city. You don't have the cost to park your car or get food or whatever you do while you're in the city, and then the cost to get back. So would you argue that they're technically in the right for trying to level out the cost of commuting, basically?
I
No,
have to see the numbers.
I have seen numbers, but I don't, especially just because,
I
again,
don't like
you
the
get that
idea.
person that makes $150,000 living in the city and the person out in the suburbs that makes $75,000. If the person that it lives in the city making $150,000 wants to, work remote or work from home a day, 2 days, whatever it is that initiates that pay cut, it doesn't matter. It's really not going to matter to them. They're still making a heck of a lot more money. And the person that lives outside the city that makes less money still has to pay for all that gas and the parking and all that, and is still
Right.
making less. So I
Yeah.
really don't see this as, and again, there needs to be more information that comes out on this. But if that's the case where they are not sort of classifying the different salary levels, and it's all sort of a blanket based off of geographic location or area code or zip code, I find it to be very problematic.
Interesting.
Because I mean, in some cases, I mean, the pandemic is almost not forced people, but they sort of set up lives where they now sort of would like to or need to stay at home a week, maybe, let's say. And again, if their productivity is still high and fine, I don't know why we're penalizing people that can work efficiently at home to work remotely.
Interesting.
They could lose some employees over this, and that's the end of what I'll say.
There you
People
go.
might quit because this makes them mad.
I could
To
see
that
it.
end, though, I will say this: there are definitely cases and situations, and this is a point I've made before on the show. There are definitely situations and cases where you definitely do need to be in a team, physical team setting, in an office, in a conference room with a whiteboard, whatever. I can definitely see that being problematic with some companies, and maybe Google's seeing this as an issue right now, and this is their response to that. Because I can't imagine in the middle of this kind of surge of the Delta variant of COVID-19 that they're trying to push this no matter what, right? There's got to be some sort of motivating factor. But yeah, I see this as pretty problematic.
Definitely.
Unless there's more information that comes out.
We'll see, and definitely we'll
Yeah.
have to do an update on this one. Well, I got a question for you guys. What is this a picture of a foldable phone? Does that look like a picture of a phone that folds in half? Well, that's a good a good answer to that question, because it's not. OnePlus just decided to release this like super cryptic video that shows this, and it looks like a foldable phone, but no, it's just them putting two phones next to each other. So yeah, they say it's like a half off sale that they're doing, but they just put two phones together. So what? But
Yeah, it's
we
weird.
were really hoping for them to release a foldable phone on that 811. And the reason that's important is because of Samsung. And they had a Galaxy Unpacked event where they released a Galaxy Z Fold 3, a Z Flip 3, Watch 4, Buds 2, and a couple of other things. Now, I really quickly read this. Basically, long story short, Samsung's releasing a bunch of new hardware, more of these flip phones, I guess. And
Foldable.
yeah, foldable. Yeah, good word. And
One of them's a flip, and one of them's like a book.
Well,
I
one's a
see.
fold, one's a flip.
One's a fold,
Yeah.
one's a flip. There
It's
we
in the
go.
name.
Who would have thought that? Who would have thought? But Hey, it's pretty cool. I mean, I still think foldable and or excuse me, flip phones where there's no you have a literal crease in the screen. I just see that as a terrible idea. But that's just me.
Sure. Supposedly all of their stuff got, it's like their year over year improvements good. Stuff got better. That's gotten waterproofing.
Hmm.
It's whatever. One UI has never been for me, so the phones don't actually grab me. I think the real star here is actually the watch.
Right, and
I agree. I agree.
I was gonna mention that the Galaxy Watch 4 is the is really interesting. It looks some health
Yes.
features on there and like heart rate, blood oxygen, an electrocardiogram, and sleep tracking on this thing, which is kind of cool. I think that's awesome. So,
Well,
Yeah,
are
it's
those? I don't think those are new features. I think the newest feature that they're
oh,
talking about is the electrical bioimpedance sensor, which is something I
yes.
actually did want to talk about because um, I just got this Apple Watch 6 in January, February, 1 and 2. It has all those features already. The only thing it doesn't have is that electrical bioimpedance sensor. It
Oh my
measures
God. I'm going
it's
to defend
full.
Apple.
Okay, hold on. It's got full this sensor, which is really neat on this device. It measures full body analysis for BMI, muscle mass, and hydration. I think this is a really
hmm,
neat feature, especially for a wearable. For someone who already has this sort of wearable for health and for fitness, to be able to track your BMI and muscle mass, I think it's very important. And hydration as well is extremely important when you're working out and when you're trying to get fit. This is something I really hope that Apple integrates into their product, their next watch, if not the following one. I think it's a really neat sensor here.
for sure.
Okay, and now's the part where oh my God, I'm going to defend Apple. What year is this? So I actually have a smart scale, and it has that electric bioimpedance, and it's really cool, and I get that. It's a very unreliable measure of all these things.
Hmm.
Like your BMI will fluctuate wildly, your fat percentage will fluctuate by 5 or 6% on a given day. Like it's really not a very consistent, good measurement. It's interesting to use it and to try and track things that way because you can kind of normalize all your points over a period of time and I think get an idea.
Right,
And that's how
right.
I've tried to use it anyway. But I understand why Apple has chosen not to implement it, and it's because getting it to like relay accurate information consistently is nearly impossible. It's very difficult.
Right. So you think they're gonna wait for the tech to improve before they
I
actually
don't know if
implement
they're
that?
going to use it at all.
That's a
Really?
very Apple thing, though. Waiting for the tech
Oh,
to
yeah,
improve
that's
or
true.
figuring out how they can do it better. I can see
Yeah.
that being the case.
Someone might figure
One,
out a better way to do this.
yeah, I will say, Ryan, one sort of corollary to your point, or jumping off thing for what you said, was that. Oh wow, I've totally lost my thought. That kind of blows. I had this great segue, and then I totally dropped it. Oh, I will say this. One of the features that I've used quite a bit on my Apple Watch is the health monitoring feature. I believe it's a new one. If it's not, it's new to me. Specifically for monitoring like beats per minute. I definitely feel when I'm stressed that I can see it jump, and I try and then take active measures to bring it down. It's not very good to have your heart rate up, past your resting heart rate unless you're working out, right? So if it's constantly very
Uh,
high, that's a good sign that you should probably, you know, decrease your stress levels and things like that. Now, I will say that looking at it for long periods of time can be negative because you can keep it consistent. But to that end, I have found that the especially in the Apple Watch, the heart rate monitor for BPM can be very off, and it's not quite what you expect or hope it to be. But I think that has everything to do with how tight the band is, the position
what you
of the watch on your forearm. From what I've heard, you can get a band that goes around kind of like your bicep, tricep, and that actually gives you better readings because it, for whatever reason, gives better contact or there's better a portion of your body that is more, I don't know, readable for that sort of thing.
yeah.
Um, but to your point, though, I will say that it's not just that one sensor that can have issues or does have issues. It's truly, I think, all about the placement of the sensor, as well as how close it is to your skin, or how tight the wearable is to your skin.
Sure. But to my knowledge, that one is like, it's not just a placement thing. It's because it's bioimpedance. So it's basically sending a little bit of current through you to try and like figure, and it's guessing. That's the problem, because different parts of you have different resistances. Obviously, fat has a different resistance than water, which has a different resistance than muscle and all that. So it's just trying to kind of take that and kind of guess its way through. And it's hard. There's not like, it's hard to account for things like bones. It's hard to account for the amount of hair someone has on them. Like,
Right.
it's a very difficult sensor to optimize, is what I think.
I can see that too. And even if I feel like there's a very specific market that both of these devices, well, in a way, theoretical Apple device
Sure.
would target. With the Samsung, I think you're really targeting your
I
enthusiasts,
want to,
the people who really want to like just see the data, even if it's not like
sure.
super relevant, just see it. Like it's super cool, it's new, it's exciting. With Apple, people are generally more trusting of the data that something like that would produce. They'd feel more, they'd feel almost betrayed if it wasn't the highest quality, the most accurate, the best it could be. So
Sure.
Mm.
And I mean, this watch has an interesting place in the market because I don't know how closely you guys have watched like wearables, but when this first like became a trend, there was a glut. Every company had their wearable, they had whatever they were doing with it. And then like you had fit bands, and you had like bands that were just for health and all that, and that's all kind of slowly faded out. There's no, let's see, there's like 2 Android wearables I think that are like even remotely popular in the US, and that's
gear.
I think it's the OnePlus watch, and then this Samsung's watch.
Hmm.
What I think gets a lot more share is, say, like Fitbit. I think gets more share than those do. I think there's another one that's similar, Garmin maybe, or
Garmin,
something.
yeah, Garmin does one.
Some of those
Mm.
like health specific bands get a lot more play than the actual Android stuff. The Apple Watch sells obviously a bunch to Apple people. They love it. Kudos, whatever.
We do love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
kudos. It's good. Awesome. So this, I think, has potential to, depending on how much they gatekeep it to Samsung devices, you could actually sell, I think, a lot of these to Android people, because we don't have like a flagship watch like that.
True.
And Samsung has taken a lot of steps with this. It's their own custom silicon, or I assume it's their own custom silicon. It might be
We'll get
IP
to,
that they're It might be IP that they're borrowing from people and
we're gonna
just
get that to that.
aggregating into their chip. I don't actually, because I read something with the ARM chips they're using, whatnot. Not 100% sure. But then one thing I do know is they were working supposedly hand in hand with Google on whatever Google's update to Wear OS is going to be, so that
Right.
it can more tightly integrate with Android as a whole. So hopefully that means other Android phones as well.
Well, it's
Yeah.
great that
Well,
you bring that
oh,
up. Okay, fine. Say your point. I'm gonna transition after that.
last thing. Um, I, just 'cause I couldn't help myself from going back to the sensor thing. I think you can compare it kind of just to weighing yourself daily. It's not going to do anything for you. You're not going to get any good information from weighing yourself, or not even daily, multiple
No,
times
no,
a
no, no.
day, right? Or even, day after day. It's a sort of over time progression that I think makes the difference. And so for something like a BMI sensor, I think it's good for over time. I think you just have to stress the importance that A, it's new technology, and B, and so it's not going to be, as effective or as is good, as it could be in, let's say, 3 years. And also, this is not something you can just, take every 5 hours, every other day, because it's not going to drastically change day by day. It's an overtime sort of thing, kind
The
of like weight.
BMI is consistent because I think that's just like height and weight related, but it's all the other add-ons, the fat percentage, the muscle percentage, and the hydration, where the hydration is the only like day by day one that would actually matter.
Right.
And I don't know how accurate that one is. I don't think it's very, but I've been wrong before.
Sure.
Sure. Well, anyway, Ryan, you brought up a point about custom silicon. And Samsung here introduced the industry's first 5 nanometer processor powering wearables. The Exynos W920 has LTE connectivity. And yeah, there's this really cool article from Samsung here about basically this new chip, which has two ARM Cortex A55s, an ARM Mali G68 GPU, and a I don't think it said the amount of memory on there, but yeah,
A
cool
gig and a half.
gig and a half
Or that
somewhere.
might be storage. No, I think a gig and a half of memory, 16 gigs of storage.
Okay, yeah, for sure, and a 4G modem. Like, hey, it's pretty cool to see some new development, and in this case specifically for wearables, which I think is cool. So that's I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, no, I think it's pretty cool. I also think it's really funny that last week we were talking about the tensor chip, and we were talking about how it's going to be most definitely available to wearables, and it's going to be most likely a 5 nanometer architecture. And so I'm not quite sure if you can say that Samsung beat them to the punch,
You can't.
because they don't say that or when it's going to be available, right? We only know that Google is going to have their announcement very soon, and so they could basically, confirm their claims and that it could be the first one brought to market. But I think it is kind of funny that they're going back and forth on 5 nanometer, and
I
let's
mean,
hope that this continues to be the industry standard where we're pushing it the bounds of chip fabrication, and we can get to smaller and smaller chips. Obviously, there's a limit,
yeah.
but it's good. It's a good step in the right direction for the industry, right?
Yeah. I mean, Samsung's had their Xenos, or however that's pronounced, line of processors for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't think it holds quite up to the Tensor one, just because the Tensor one has all those like ML specific cores for
Right.
machine learning,
Right.
and it has, I think, integration with their Titan M2 chip for security or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, basically their version of a TPM. So
Yeah.
yeah, very cool. Well,
But it's good to have those tiny, tiny ones, especially on wearables where that
Definitely.
battery life you need to eke out every little bit.
definitely.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. Cool. Um, I'm not sure. I know Ryan, you may have to head
I
out,
need to
but
go.
yeah.
You
So
guys can continue without me. The show must go on,
the
but I
show
need to
must
go.
go on. So if you don't mind, can you cover up your camera and just kind of like mute yourself because it's going to ruin pretty much everything about the setup currently. If Oh, okay. I see how it is. But anyway, I'm gonna turn off your video feed here. I think it's this one. Yep, there we go.
There you go. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much to Ryan for joining us today. Before we move on, just wanted to kind of go over a couple of things here. Oh, I got a tickle in my nose. There we go. Okay, awesome. So our next article here, just left with Matt Squared here. We have an article about
Thank you for
There we go. Amazon opening up its $1.5 billion air hub in Kentucky, like the northern Cincinnati airport there, basically to cut down on delivery times. And this is interesting because it's a tech company that got into aviation, and now they own like 75 planes, which is kind of insane. So, yeah.
Yeah, actually, there's a more interesting point than that, right? Amazon started as a competitor just to other companies to get all kinds of products as a web service, and then obviously using other distributors to get their products to consumers. Now, what you're seeing though is with this big distribution center, it's interesting that they could now have the capability and the capacity to operate as a limited or small-ish compared to, let's say, USPS or even UPS, unless numbers are really good, a small parcel service. We talk about all kinds of these companies becoming more than what they initially were, right? Google last week, we talked about how they started as a software company and now they're getting into hardware. It's interesting to see that there's potential for,
Well,
you can get your products shipped by Amazon, and especially because they're pumping all kinds of money into their infrastructure for delivery services. You see it with this 1.5 or what was it, 1.5,
yeah,
I believe it was, $1 billion.
$1.5 billion.
Yeah, this $1.5 billion distribution terminal at an airport. You've seen it before with their big push for their own electric. I'm not sure if they're autonomous, but at the very least, electric vehicles for delivery. I can see them becoming not just a company that sells you stuff, not just a company that web hosts and is very good at that, and that's a big part of their marketing and strategy. Not just a media company with their Amazon Prime, right, or with the Amazon Prime Video, but now also potentially
An
as a package
airline.
delivery
Yeah,
service.
a legit package delivery service. And it's cool you bring that up too, because from the inception of Amazon up, I think I forget when it started, but there's a feature of Amazon that allows you to basically send them just basically straight from the factory, send them all your product. They will warehouse, they will package, they will ship, and they will sell all of the product that you make from your factory. So you're killing the supply chain there, because you are going straight from basically factory to consumer almost. You don't really have a middleman there. I mean, Amazon is your warehousing middleman here, but there it's not the traditional like three levels. You have like your distributor, then your wholesaler, then your supplier, then your consumer. Like it's or your store, then your consumer. Like it is just cutting
Right.
out so much of that supply chain there. And I think that's what Amazon's really going for, especially with this new hub, this service offering, where they're just going to be the one-stop shop of, you want to sell something online, yeah, you just write us a check. You don't have to worry about USPS. You don't have to worry about anything. We're just going to do every single thing for you. So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's funny that the premise of this article is just they're going to be expanding their services. They're going to make their 1-day shipping, their 2-day shipping, whatever, same-day shipping quicker, more effective, more efficient, and better for the consumer. But I do think there's ultimately many more important and bigger implications of this huge new hub. There's something like what, 15 planes? They said that they can have 25 or 50. It could even be more. It's in the article. I can't recall. But they bought a lot of planes
yeah,
to be able to do this.
well
And they used Boeing airline planes.
yep. It says in here, I read it earlier. They have It's designed to have a capacity of 100 Amazon planes. As of right now, Amazon Air only has more than 75 aircraft in the network, and the company expects to have more than 80 by this time next year, and 85 leased and owned by the end of 2022. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
insane.
impressive. That's
Like,
really impressive. That's insane.
and it's crazy because they have some bigger players like Atlas Air Transport Services, and Sun Country Airlines basically contracting and flying planes for Amazon. So they basically either repaint one of their planes, or they get in an Amazon plane and they just operate the plane, which is crazy, and it's still keeping all that stuff going. Like I remember I've when we go plane watching, we can literally see the Amazon planes taking off, and it is so cool to just see a big blue plane taking off in front of you. So it's cool. I mean, I think it's awesome. Hopefully, Amazon will benefit exponentially from this, but I just want to make sure that we still have a free transportation market. That's the only thing. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I think actually your biggest point here is that Amazon is kind of consuming or becoming this huge vertical, or is it the horizontal? It's vertical, right?
you're
It's everything but making the product.
right. I forget which one that is, and I want to say
Is that not vertical
I think it's
integration?
vertical. Yeah. Uh,
Well,
let's
either
see.
way, I think it's amazing to see this again. This company that started as just a goods seller,
Yeah, it's
store,
vertical
an
integration.
online store. Yeah, so it is vertical
It's
integration.
vertical integration.
Yeah, I think it's just so interesting to see that. And moreover, actually, I mean, not to mention they make their own products, right? You know, they have the Amazon Echo, they have all these other devices. So I mean, technically, they're not just in the space of vertical integration with everything but the product for what you could call their customers. Customers not even just being the consumers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're also their customers.
Right.
They're also doing this, or they're completing this vertical integration ladder with their own products.
Right.
So it's interesting to see a company that's so fully kind of put together, top down for their own stuff, and then also becoming this new vertical for any other company that wants to sell a product to consumers.
Right. Definitely. And we're going to have to keep an eye on that because I can only expect it to grow, especially as Amazon becomes more friendly with the FAA and a any form of governmental agency or regulatory body. I know there's been talk of Amazon drones actually being like a legit thing, and who knows? It's going to be interesting. So
I just hope this speeds up the shipping times. I know during the pandemic, it's been hard for people and for companies to keep up with demand and to get people packages in a timely manner, especially when you're talking about things like medication or important, let's say, I don't know, documents, which obviously Amazon is not in the business of shipping, right? But I do hope this does alleviate sort of these concerns of shipping and lead times for products, or
for sure,
factoring into the lead times for products.
definitely. Hey, we'll keep an eye on that. So the next story that we have for you tonight is kind of wacky. Like, this is just kind of a wacky story. It is a hacker stole over $600 million of crypto, and now they're giving it back. The hacker says they're not so interested in money. And long story short, they stole a bunch of cryptocurrency off of the Poly network here. Basically, it's a protocol that lets people transfer cryptocurrencies between blockchains. And basically, as a bridge, that's where they're kind of intercepting, this cryptocurrency. And the hackers, they posted this message to a hacker being like, hey, please give it back. You're going to make a lot of people unhappy and things are going to be weird for you. And the hacker's just like, okay. So he started like transferring the coins back, but leaving all sorts of like cryptic messages about how he's not interested in money and he doesn't like all the other coins in the market that he uses a cuss word to describe, and basically says how he's trying to almost rid the market of all of these small no-name coins, basically. And his goal is to basically devalue all of those small coins, which according to people may actually be happening, and just kind of focus on a couple of the big coins that currently exist in the blockchains. So I don't know. This is just wacky. Like, the guy stole all the money and is giving it back, and he's just like, well, I just want there to be less competition, basically. So
yeah, I mean, it's really bizarre. I mean, I suppose you can sort of compare it to something, for example, like ridding the market or ridding stores of Ticonderoga #2 pencils to try and sell more Papermate pencils, right? To keep the Papermate company making all the money for their pencils. It's a little out there and a little wacky. I think the most profound thing, though, is that you're seeing someone very willingly give back this stolen crypto, albeit in a very slow, kind of painfully slow manner. It is just a little bizarre. I mean, like, you talk about manipulation of money and of just stuff, right? This is a really odd way to do that. We talked last week about was Ethereum doing a sort of, almost in a way, money manipulation, but more so a protective measure to make sure that Ethereum will last and that it doesn't outgrow itself. This is a consumer or just a random guy taking matters into his own hands, which is just, it's a little out there. But if it really can make an impact, that is also a little concerning, right? Because what happens if you get people that do this with some of the bigger coins, like Ethereum, if they're trying to bolster Bitcoin or vice versa, right?
Hmm. Right. I mean, I don't know. I just think this is just so wacky. I, I I keep going back to that. I'm like, they're just trying to get rid of a base level market and then just boost the two highest things. It's basically as if Amazon would go into the market and just basically kill anything that isn't themselves or eBay, and just be like, these are the only two places you could get your stuff online. Everybody else, you're we're going to hack you and put you out of business, basically. So
I gotta caution you to be careful though about company manipulation sort of example. I think a better example, again, like I said, would be a more consumer based,
yeah, I
like
guess.
getting all the Ticonderoga pencils to boost Papermate's pencils. Or I hope they make pencils.
Yeah, they do.
Um,
They do.
either way, yeah, it's just a kind of wacky thing. But also to see that they're able to intercept this coin in a seemingly very tight and secure sort of ecosystem that and a lot of people are being kind of told to believe that it's secure, and are other people and adopters of the coins are also trying to reinforce that notion to not only alleviate people's concerns, but to grow the adoption rate. And so I can definitely
Right.
see this as a sort of roadblock for people that are looking into or that are thinking of adopting or getting into crypto, seeing that, well, it might not be as secure as you think.
Definitely. Well, I have to once again see how that goes, and hopefully that won't have any major effects on a lot of smaller coins. Alrighty, moving on, we have a couple of quick articles here. First one, Cybertruck delayed until at least 2022. Um, Everybody kind of expected it. Yeah, I don't think there's really much that we can say on that. Honestly, it's like everybody was expecting the thing to get delayed, and it did. So,
I
yay.
mean, when was the semi unveiled?
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, that was easily 3 years ago at this point, and I believe the Cybertruck was very close there too. In fact, the Semi and the Roadster, which was supposed to come out last year, were unveiled at the same event. Um, the Cybertruck was either 2019 or 18. Regardless,
Hmm.
um, this is not off-brand for Tesla, but I think this kind of continues a sort of bad trend for Tesla, right? They just became profitable in the sense that not just profiting off of all of their revenue, but specifically that they didn't have to sell more of their energy credits to make themselves profitable. Their car sales actually helped.
Yeah.
This is not good for Tesla. They've had so many logistical issues with the Model 3, the Model Y, the newest Tesla, Model S. I mean,
Right.
it's they need to get a grip on this. Now I understand that yes, we're in the middle of a chip shortage. There are extenuating circumstances, but I really think that Tesla needs to kind of recognize that they have a problem of not just unveiling a product before it's even done, but over promising and in some cases under delivering, especially when you consider a lot of the quality issues that a lot of these Teslas face. Now, I can really only speak specifically on the Model S's, but I can only imagine that it is trickled down. I can't say how many videos I've seen of Tesla owners that show that their cars, when they get them, have all kinds of weird gaps between the trim, and car doors don't fit the right way. I mean, talk about a design flaw, like in the back of the trunk. Just unlike regular cars that have a rubber gasket or lip that keep water or rain or snow
Or
from going
debris.
into the trunk when the
Mhm.
trunk is opened, there's nothing like that for the Tesla. So it just goes straight in. These are really easy design considerations and things that should be fixed, especially before you ramp up production on not just one vehicle, but 4 vehicles and 3 more that they want to pursue.
Right.
So I think they need to cool it on their unveilings and figure out their logistics first, because I think that's going to ultimately hurt them more than anything else.
Right.
And this is
Well,
only another example of that.
on the bright side, though, the next article here, the battery capacity retention averages 90% after 200,000 miles in a Tesla. Like that's pretty decent. And I mean, we quality issues aside in terms of like more design overlooks or physical stuff, the battery's pretty good. Like let's think about that for a second. 90% after 200,000 miles on a car, to have 90% of the original, basically I I don't know if this would be
Charge
the right,
capacity.
yeah, charge capacity, and in a way lifespan, I guess you could say. I mean, granted, there's other parts that could fail or whatever's going on depending on bearings, things like that, but in a way 90% of the life of your car after 200,000 miles, which is kind of crazy. So
Yeah, Tesla Tesla actually is a really interesting business model in that um, they sell you a car that is very heavily reliant on technology. And because it is so reliant on the software updates, or they push the software updates as a big portion or part of the sale of the car, um, you can make a very easy argument that Teslas actually only get better over time. With newer software updates that unlocks more features, it makes the cars more efficient. Um, that is not the case with standard vehicles that lose, a lot of their value when they drive off the lot with no, promising features to come in the future other than maybe a maps update if you can get it for the car
right,
manufacturer, and even then it's kind of a pain in the butt. And Tesla has over the air software updates. So I mean, you start with this car that only gets better over time, and now you add on the fact that not only do they get better over time, but they stay pretty consistently up to charge, if you want to use that terminology, over time as well. Think
right.
about, I mean, how long a standard consumer will keep their vehicle. 200,000 miles is actually a pretty long range and long mileage for a single user or a first owner of a vehicle.
Yeah.
And to keep it at that high charge capacity at 90% after 200,000 miles is pretty impressive. Now, you mentioned a good point, right? It's not just about the battery. It's not just about the electronics. There's physical, mechanical parts that can fail, and very understandably so. But the car more heavily reliant on technology and on electronics and the software side of things. Honestly, this only makes the quality things aside. This only makes Teslas a little more desirable.
I believe so. I definitely think that it's going to be interesting to see as when these cars start approaching 300, 400, 500,000 miles, because I don't think people are going to be as reluctant to give up a car like a Tesla as they would be with a normal internal combustion engine car. Like, unfortunately, I had to wind up giving up mine because of some issues with the engine and some other cosmetic stuff. Like I had to. It was going to cost me more to fix said problems than it would have been for the value of the car. So it's crazy, and we can see the elimination of a lot of these problems with these electric vehicles, with these batteries that are becoming more and more complex, more and more energy dense, more and more available to people. And as our next article shows, the new update on the 4680 battery from Tesla is basically saying like, wow, this is making this very much more effective than a lot of the current technology out there. Um, Basically, in 2020, they released this battery, um, giving a little bit of information about it, but basically they validated that these things actually existed with their last report that they published. So like legitimately saying, hey, we actually have this ready to go, and hey, this is validated, and we are like ready to push this out. So
Well, Well, I don't know if it's actually quite ready. I think the article, the reason the article was posted was more so to say that it's not quite ready yet, but they have validated it, and
That's
that
what I
it's
mean.
good to go.
They've gotten that initial step. Like, it's not just theory anymore. They've consistently validated that this does work, and they're getting down that road to production.
Yeah, can you pull up some numbers on that? I don't have them
Sure.
off the top of my head, but I think it's really important to talk about these things. I think that I think the next biggest revolution in technology, and I firmly believe this, is battery technology, mobile battery technology, car battery technology, electrifying, planes, trains, automobiles, the whole gamut, right? Um, the next biggest revolution, and I think we're finally seeing it in trickle down into consumer electronics, because these things have been theoretical for a while and made in labs and things like that, that weren't very viable to the public. With something like this, I think really we are starting a new emergence of this new big tech boom of energy, of energy dense batteries. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. Obviously, Tesla has kind of pushed this. They've been big on batteries with their gigafactories, with their wall packs. I'm really excited for this. If you haven't seen it, I really encourage you to go watch Tesla's Battery Day from 2020 last year. I can't remember if it was the beginning of September, the end of September, or the end of August, but it was in
It
that
just
time
says
frame.
September 2020.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they give so many good. I mean, they lay it out for you. They talk about everything that they did to make this battery more efficient, and to make batteries in general more efficient, and to make this specific one so efficient, not just in terms of cost for them, but in terms of efficiently packing energy into that physical form, that
Right.
46 millimeter by 80 millimeter size. It's
Right.
really impressive. If you have the stats, I'd really like just sort of throw them out there. It's really wild.
Yeah, that's crazy, and I definitely want to see how this pans out for Tesla too. With as this technology develops, as we're seeing some of this stuff progressing here. Um, and you mention all the stuff about like Tesla storing this energy, um, moving along with the self-driving technology being so software update dependent. um, it's interesting that you bring that up because there's this article, I think you sent this one in actually, from Car and Driver here about how
Yep.
saying other driver assist systems work without drivers too. And basically this article is fascinating about how the reviewers here basically fooled all of these automakers systems into working, basically, like taping up a pair of sunglasses or putting a weight over the steering wheel and all that stuff, and just kind of fooling all of these systems into working correctly. So I just thought it was interesting, like they put a weight over the steering wheel to fool it that there was a hand on the wheel. They taped up one of those like uh eyeglasses, like the funny um novelty stuff to trick it into that you're looking in the road, and like a bunch of stuff like that, like really kind of, I don't want to call it hacking, but fooling the technology.
I think this only proves that we are years away, and I'm not even sure if years is maybe even the right word. Might be a decade. I don't think it's really truly that far in the future, but I really think this just kind of affirms or reaffirms the idea that self-driving cars are not that kind of monitor the driver, right? Um, are not fully there yet. They're not really there yet.
Right.
If you can prove that, by taping a pair of novelty sunglasses onto the back of on the headrest of a car seat, or put a weight on the wheel, which, I mean, putting a weight in the wheel is a really easy thing to do. Just get some duct tape. I mean, that stuff will work pretty well.
Hmm.
Um, if it's that easy to trick the system into working, or to further progressing the car and whatever it's doing, I think it's scary, and it just proves that the technology is not there yet. And to that end, we should not really be relying on this stuff as much as we should, because if you can fool a car with fake means of a person there, imagine if someone is impaired or dozes off or whatever, and it still senses that person's there, and it still works just as capably. Now I know that
Right.
there's already safeguards for that, but I mean there's so many other instances, not just being drunk or falling asleep, that very obviously and very clearly can fake the cameras. I mean, just wearing the googly eye pair of glasses when you're driving is problematic.
Yeah,
And to
even
that end, we talked about manufacturers possibly being mandated to put these systems in cars to make sure that the drivers are okay to drive.
right.
I think this kind of further proves that it's a very good idea in principle,
Hmm.
but in practice and reality, it's not quite feasible, at least right now.
Right. And we'll definitely have to see as that progresses. I mean, it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. We had a story a while back about how people would put a piece of duct tape on a 35-mile-an-hour sign and trick a Tesla into going 85. Like, it's one of those things where you don't know what
Oh
you don't
man.
know. So, hey, we'll
Ah,
you gotta see. So, well, I'm kind of interested in these ways how people don't necessarily abuse the technology but trick it. And that gives a lot of insight into researchers and safety practitioners who are all working to prevent things like exactly that from happening. So, yeah, we're gonna have to see. Another news story that we have here. This is more so on the side of privacy here, but basically, this Columbia call center for teleperformance here that serves Apple, Amazon, and Uber basically wants to install cameras in their employees' homes to monitor their work and basically record whatever happens. And basically, they mentioned this at their office in Columbia, um, and yeah, they're just kind of like, what do we do? We work at home. We don't work in like an office. I don't want to literally have the employer watching me at all times through a camera. Like,
yeah, I think it's more the idea that they can, because I doubt they're going to be monitoring every single person live. Not
it
not
said
maybe not
it's
monitoring every single person live, but someone is really going to be looking at every single person that's working live, right?
they said
That's
it's AI looking for basically like key indicators for certain
okay.
things. So they didn't really
Yeah,
go into what that was, but I have a feeling it's like if you pick up your phone, like your cell phone, where like if you touch a specific area to like receive a call on a headset or something like that, and then whether it may actually be you who's really working and not somebody else. So
hmm,
that's my thoughts. I don't
that's
support this, but
yeah.
I understand from a company perspective why they would want to see this, but I think it's a mass invasion of privacy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think a sort of semi example of this that's already in practice, and especially during the pandemic, and Fitz, you're well aware of this as well. In universities, especially Purdue University, when you do take home tests, you have to do like a interesting like screen sharing tech. You toggle this application, it locks you out of a lot of other applications, but it also records
Hmm.
you while you're taking the test. And it'll flag, the system will flag you for any sort of erroneous behavior, whether, yeah, you're touching your something offside or you're looking one way when you shouldn't be. This sort of technology is already kind of out there, and that's obviously for a very good reason, keep kids from cheating. Um, does it really settle my the chaotic side of my brain, thinking I don't really love people looking at me, much less AI kind of like trying to trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Trying to catch
I
me
don't
in
like
the
that.
act there. Yeah, like basically
Yeah,
trying to incriminate me.
but it's a sort of similar example where you have sort of higher power, whether it be the employer or the university, trying to make sure that the students or the workers aren't doing behavior or aren't participating in behavior that is that's not acceptable, that is sort of like negative, especially for the example that I gave for cheating on tests. Um, but yeah, it's a little shady. I know a friend of mine who owns a or runs a company was talking about installing a sort of monitoring software on her employees' laptops, and she's kind of like an older um, generation, and she saw it as more of like a, yeah, this makes sense. If they're working at home, they should be monitored. And obviously, she said that, or at least obviously to you, me, she mentioned that, yeah, these younger people push back so much, and I don't really understand why. It's company property, on their company laptops. We need to make sure they're working right. And I just had to remind them, like, it sort of is an invasion of privacy. If you don't really trust your employees to work effectively at home, I think there's a bigger issue. It's not, I mean, technology is not going to fix that. Or really gonna change much. I can't imagine. Yeah, if you get scared to lose your job, I think maybe. But I would almost say that, especially in this day and age where we're seeing more and more people work from home and wanting to work from home, especially in newer jobs that people are getting over the course of this pandemic, I can see this sort of a sticking point for people if they know or have a feeling that they're going to be monitored in their new workplace, that their employer doesn't trust
Yeah,
them to do the work that they need to do.
definitely. And it's one of those things where this is literally the most um direct correlation I have ever seen to George Orwell's 1984. Like literally the most like dead spot on connection I've seen to that book. And it's crazy. Big Brother literally watching you. And if you haven't read that, definitely give it a read. Um, but it's a basically summary about a dystopian society where the government watches your every move and you get thrown in a camp if you have free thought, basically. Um, and that's
Yeah,
almost in a way what they're doing here. They're monitoring your performance. If you're not doing everything as you should, chances are you're going to get terminated. So it's very similar correlation here. So I don't know. It's
yeah.
definitely
I mean, I can only imagine if my company just out of the blue said, all right, you can no longer cover your cameras. You always have to have them on, no matter if you're in a meeting or not. I can only imagine the pushback from my other coworkers, as well as any other. I think a very, I mean, any employee
right,
who feels that they think they have a right to privacy, which they do. Um,
right.
that they shouldn't always have to be monitored every second of the day. There are better ways to track performance, weekly check-ins, or by monthly check-ins or whatever it is, every other week or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, they could be monitoring, how well you're doing on projects, if projects are moving along, if you're getting through your queue, for example, of people over the phone quickly enough, or if you're not getting enough, uh, if you're not calling more people or whatever. Um, yeah, I can see that being a better way to track productivity, because if you're not answering calls or you're not taking calls, or helping out customers further than you need to,
Hmm.
uh, that's a very easy thing to track and a better way, I think, to kind of solve this employees not working effectively or
Right,
efficiently problem.
definitely. Well, we're we're gonna have to see once again how that pans out. I mean, I will be honest with you. I thought the article ended after before the first ad, so I wasn't able to read like the entire thing. I'm probably going to do another follow up on this similar story or something along the lines of this because I actually just found this a little earlier today. Um, this specific story, even though it's a couple days old. Um, but yeah, it's crazy. The next article we have for you is kind of stupid, but it's really funny. People are buying $200,000 NFT rocks. Basically, they have the Other Rock, which is just basically a one of one NFT that is just basically a rock. It's a picture of a rock. It's on the Other Rock's website. It says that the NFTs serve no purpose beyond being able to bought and sold, giving you a strong sense of pride being an owner of one of only 100 rocks. Like, if 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 this is not an example that we are living in a meme economy, I don't know what is.
I thought the bottom of the barrel, and it was a pretty shallow bottom of the barrel at the time, was selling pictures of 8-bit animated or digital characters. If I thought that was kind of pointless, I really can't wrap my mind around this. And not only that, but I think it just makes that barrel a bit taller with the bottom a heck of a bit deeper. Really scraping the bottom of the barrel there for digital monetizable content.
Right.
I've made plenty of cases for and against NFTs on the show. I've said I can't wait to see where it goes. I mean, obviously, it's kind of what we say about a lot of these articles, but specifically with NFTs, because it seems that they're really popping off this year, and there have been some really cool use cases for it. We had the one where it was for a timeshare. They used it as a sort of
A
reservation,
token, yeah.
and purchase and ownership of a timeshare. We've seen doing digital versions of physical things, like the Steve Jobs first business application or job application, which is just kind of cool thing. We've seen art to sort and kind of help the museums where the art actually lies sort of recoup those the money lost from COVID. This is just a really pointless thing, and it just kind of goes to show, like, people will pay for anything if they know that it's scarce, and if they also think that it will be a valuable asset in their portfolio moving forward. That being said, just a personal opinion, and again, we are not financial advisors. I think this is pointless. I think it's stupid. I think you can spend your money in far better ways. Just in stocks alone that are a little more, that are a little more stable. And again, and I'll say this again, since Ryan's not here to say it for me, we are not financial advisors. We cannot advise you on what to do with your money, where to invest it, anything of the sort. But again, as my opinion, I think this is, for lack of a better term, pointless and stupid. And
it literally says so in the article.
Money on that, especially with the amount of money that people are paying for these. There are better NFTs to buy that could actually be valuable and potentially increase in value. I can't imagine this being one of those.
There you go. Well, before we get into our last article, you sent in, once again, one of our funny tweets to go over before we get into that. So I'll hand the floor over to you. Let me know when you want me to throw up the image.
Yeah, another week of meme tweets. Again, the purpose of this segment, there's plenty of tweets out there that are thrown out, with negativity, and they're very politically charged. And, we're constantly hearing this concept of mean tweets. And so the purpose of this is just throw out a funny tweet, something that just kind of is very tongue-in-cheek, trying to get some of the tech people in the industry and catch them on what they're tweeting. Elon Musk was very caught up in SpaceX this past week, so unfortunately he didn't have any good memeable moments. But one that was very memeable, and that was a very instant hot button issue, which we already covered early in the episode, was Apple and their monitoring of people's content and their pictures. So I'll let you bring it up there, Fitz.
Yep.
So we have a prequel meme on top of a tech meme for this Apple sort of monitoring where Anakin is very set in his ways, and Padme gets very worried. So you can just pop it up. We can let people read it for a few
Yep.
seconds, but
We're good.
yeah.
We just had it up there, but yeah, very funny, and yeah, pretty much, yeah. So we'll see where that
Sorry to our
goes.
audio only viewers or listeners. If you want to see the meme tweets, you got to tune into the or not tune in, not just tune in, but watch our show on YouTube when it is uploaded after the live. But
Yep,
yeah, just another week of meme tweets.
definitely. Well, the last article we have for you today is really interesting, and the title of this episode is just a bunch of random letters and characters, right? No, we're actually Grislow suggested this title, and I thought it was really good. And we were crunched for time, so we went with it and we rolled with it. So basically, what this is standing for is artificial intelligence plus intellectual property equals what? And for a lot of the viewers out there, this is what happened in South Africa. A patent was granted to an AI. So, yeah, long story short, and all of us on the show are really fascinated with intellectual property. We think it's super interesting. We have connections in the industry, and we just find it really fascinating to see. But basically, um, the creators of an AI called Dabis, I don't know, um, basically invented a stacking container system that would be able to get picked up by robot arms and worked with much easily than other stuff. Um, and basically, it generated the designs, all the idea for it, and then the creators of this um, algorithm submitted the patent application to all the regulatory bodies, listing the AI as the inventor. In most countries, it just got shot down immediately, like in the US, basically, where it was saying that there was somewhere in this article here that says, here it is. Um, the the respective patent laws provide for human inventors, not AI, as indicated by the use of pronouns such as him and her. Second, ideas for the purpose of patents required the element of mental conception, something of which only a human mind can do. And finally, inventorship comes with rights, which an AI cannot have. So I want to hear your take on this, Grislow. I think that it's a really interesting issue, and I agree with what the US did in this case.
I agree with you. I mean, I think number one, the first thing that comes to mind is the qualification of a person's being with pronouns. I'm sure can be a very hotly contested qualification. That aside, the purpose of that is to assign that the person that is applying for the application is a person, no matter what pronouns you use, they, them, he, her, she, he. I think I mixed some of those collectives up,
Yeah,
and then
whatever.
a lot of the other pronouns that people have now. That aside, I think it's very funny that we're getting to this point where we went from we're very afraid of robots and AI taking over. People like Elon Musk have tried to limit AI integration into the world and use to keep any sort of nefarious things from happening, to all of a sudden now granting patents to non-alive, non-beings. It's a
Right.
very bizarre. It's really just bizarre. I think that I think that you really can't reconcile with the fact that this product or this thing, this idea, the system was created by an algorithm that someone made. At the end of the day, I mean, you can argue the same about and the reason that the original developer of the AI should be granted the patent is the same reason why people that or companies that create new products get the patent for the products, as opposed to the algorithms that run the testing or the validation or the like efficiency sort of test and situations, right? It's not about the thing that it arose from. It's the idea that the original creator has sort of like a trickle down ownership chain. I
Right.
mean, in a way, you can sort of compare this to a if you as an employee use a company computer, you work on company time, you work in the office on a product that you eventually want to make and sell, your company does ultimately have ownership, or at least partial ownership over that idea or that product, because you use company time or you work in the office or you use that company laptop. It was owned by them, it's given by them, and so they have ownership of it. And I think that sort of idea still maintains truth in this situation where you have an AI creating something, but the AI was created by an individual in the first place. I think you could really
Right.
go down the rabbit hole here and make a case if an AI made an AI, and that second AI or the child AI made a product that the original AI could claim ownership of it. But again, I really think the chain of custody still goes straight to the original creator of it. I don't really think you can give derivative ownership of a product or a patent or any intellectual property to a non-alive or just a electrical
Electrical
programmed
doodads.
entity.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you. And I definitely think that as we get into, as you mentioned, more of this happening and stuff like that, I think it should go back on whatever made that the thing that made the thing. So like it's and I this is such an odd relation, but it really this kind of relates back to the video, The History of the World, I guess, by Bill Wirtz. Basically, at the end of the video, they go, and now we have thing makers, and thing makers make the thing maker that made the thought that made the thing. And like he goes down this kind of rabbit hole of like, what does the future hold? What's going to happen? And when now we're actually starting to see that, especially in the bureaucracy sense, the legal sense, the intellectual property sense here. And this is begging the question for a lot of these governments: do we have the laws in place to restrict things like this from happening, or how do we handle that? So I definitely think that as we go forward here, we're going to see reform in the governmental body that regulates ideas, that regulates the commercializations of ideas, that regulates um the the ownership of ideas. Like I just think it's a very interesting article, and I highly recommend that you give this article a read on the Next Web. Definitely an interesting read.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously there's two ways to go about this in terms of regulations, right? And there really aren't any two ways other than these. You either get, which in patents is more widely used, you get so broad in the idea of ownership that it covers any sort of entity or any sort of being, whether it be alive or sentient or AI, or you go hyper specific and create clauses specifically for AI or anything that comes out of artificial life, artificial intelligence. Either way, you're going to have issues because you're going to find loopholes if you make it too broad, or you're going to make it too specific that it doesn't cover enough of these sort of issues that arise. I think the United States Patent and Trademark Office has already kind of established those, in that it has to have a being that it does not have rights just because it's not a person. And it also has to, can't remember the third point.
They said it has to have the human mind.
Right, and it's not a free thinker,
Right.
or at least in terms of really free. Right, no one's putting a gun to your head to think of something.
Which in
In
a
that case,
way
you
is
really
how
need to get out of that situation.
I mean, in a way, that's kind of what you do for AI in order to train. It's almost like you're doing something like that. You're punishing bad and rewarding good. That's how you train an AI. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, like, and especially in the case of, again, using software to make things more efficient. It's not the software; it is the software that ultimately maybe came up with a solution. But in terms of ownership, there's still someone that made that software, right?
right.
It's not, for example, the software that made file sizes much smaller that gets the credit for making the file size smaller. Someone had to come up with an algorithm to do that, and they are the ones that get the credit, not necessarily the software that was written for that purpose. And it was made for that purpose by someone, right, who had free will, who had who have rights, who is free thinking.
Right.
I think that maybe, I guess in the case that these aren't current restrictions or sort of validators for patents in South Africa, maybe we need to think more broadly, and maybe the world needs to think more broadly about this and think about implementing these. I think in the article, though, it does say a main motivator for allowing this patent to go through was to sort of break the socioeconomic climate there, which I understand. But again, I think there would be more credit should be going to the original inventor of the algorithm of the AI. And in turn, I think that should sort of help the socioeconomic status of a country. It's trying to get more inventors, just like they would for anything else.
Definitely.
And to that end, like, I don't really think that this is really encouraging people to continue inventing and innovating. I think this really kind of only leads to people that can program really rad stuff and really smart AI to monopolize this and only take away from human inventors and creators.
We will definitely have to see how that goes, because you do bring up a valid point. And I mean, I don't know. I still think there's a lot of innovation to be had. There's a lot of patents to be granted. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. It's just one of those things where if you could patent every single thing in the world, it's just going to cost you bajillions of dollars. Like it's insane. And for an AI to even be able to develop something like that, I think is a great step in technology as a whole. It's just where should it stop? That I think is the big thing here. So
right.
Alrighty. Well, we have been going for 2 hours now at this point, so I'm probably
I think
going
we have
to
a really funny common theme of saying we're going to make this a really short episode. We're going to be more concise. And then about halfway through, we kind of realize, all right, it's probably going to be a little longer of an episode. And now we get to the 2 hour mark, and it's just, well, it is what it is.
And 2 hours right there. So anyway, we're going to sign off for today. Thank you so much for joining us for Tech Talk Nation. Follow us on our social media. Matt, I called him Matt. Grislow shouted it out at the beginning of the show. So please refer to all of that about how to follow us, get connected, and we hope you tune in to more episodes of Tech Talk Nation. Watch our social media for a lot of cool updates coming soon, and we hope to see you back here next week. So have a wonderful day and see you soon. Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Tech Talk Nation. Tune in next week for more discussion on the latest in tech.